don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world. Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
Still not on. Hey, there we go. Okay, welcome to the show, everyone. Forgot to turn the microphone on. How is it going? Welcome to everyone in the chat. I see a few people already weighing in on the topic of Bitcoin, boom or bust. We're going to be discussing that in depth today, looking at some of the catalysts for a boom in the markets, and of course, some of the problems with the potential bust in the markets. And of course, quick reminder, if you want to join the live streams, we are always doing this Monday, 2 p.m. New Zealand time. So come along and join the fun for a lot of you guys that will be sometime Sunday evening. But for everyone else in New Zealand or in Australia, Monday morning. Welcome to the week, everyone. Excellent. So I see a few people already chatting away in the chat, and so, of course, we're going to be trying to answer a lot of questions today as well, so feel free to bring those questions in, but I got a few different talking points here for us we're going to be going through as we move on. First thing, somebody in there saying they've sold their Nano. Was it a good move? Well, I always look at crypto trades like this. If you made money, then you're doing okay. Now, obviously, some people will say, yeah, but I want to hold on to it forever and make even more money. Well, that's okay, too. But if you made some money off your trade, you're winning. So take the victories when you get them, guys. Neil Jones says the people need to remove themselves from elitist control and manipulation. Neil, it's much easier said than done. And we see so much of this going on here. And look, we see what's going on with social media right now, for example. And it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy what kind of manipulation is going on, the control of dissent, the quieting of voices. So definitely this is going on. Obviously, there's a lot of manipulation in the crypto markets as well. Somebody earlier was saying something along the lines of the crypto markets are too manipulated to come back to a boom again in the future. But I do not believe that. I believe that the crypto markets are just getting heated up. And we have so far to go in terms of where the markets are going to be. And look, we talk a lot about the underlying principles behind cryptocurrency and the ability to have censorship resistance and all of these different things. But at the same time, making some sweet money is also a cool thing to do. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, one thing that I get a lot before we start this conversation on where Bitcoin is going and all that fun stuff is, of course, what is your end goal? Are you looking to get more fiat or more Bitcoin? This is an interesting conversation, I think, for a lot of people to think about, because if Bitcoin is the future of money, then it's an interesting hedge. And obviously you can get some gold as well, for example. And Bitcoin's more utilitarian than gold in the terms of it being a more fungible, easier to transfer, faster to transfer form of money versus gold. But Crypto Brad says, I have no idea why people are even worrying. Come back in 6 months. This mother is going to the moon if you're worried about price. Yes, this is true. This is true. See, it's interesting, Crypto Brad. In terms of that conversation, I think a lot of the people who are worried are people who have come into the market more recently. People who have come in December and January in particular. But nevertheless, looking at crypto today, we are definitely in that period of fear. And when you're in the period of fear, it makes what you look at and see a very different perspective from when you're in a time of elation. And yet, we of course have to look back the other way and think, hey, wait a second. Isn't this the best time to be buying? Well, of course, it's not a bad time to be buying, of course. Now, a thought, the Burning Man bump. Is Burning Man going to bump the crypto markets up? Well, that is an interesting question to think about for sure. And you might think, Lark, what the hell does Burning Man have to do with crypto? Well, it's interesting, actually. There are a lot of movers and shakers from the crypto industry who are all going to be hanging out in the desert together. Could be a thing. I mean, in terms of the promise of the consensus bump, for example, Burning Man is just as likely. Maybe even more likely when it comes down to it. It's interesting to see who's going, though. I mean, we have Akon going. Obviously, he's just announced about the EOS Alliance. Brock Pierce is a regular feature there, regardless of how you feel about the man. He is very influential in the crypto space. We also see Dahong Fei's going, for example, and a lot of other people too. Interestingly, Nouriel Roubini, who we're going to talk about in a moment, is staying in the same camp that my mom is at Burning Man. Remember when she told me, she said, oh, this is the Nouriel Rubini guy. You ever heard of him? Like, oh, yeah, that guy. I know who that is. Well, he's in your camp? That's ridiculous, but that's Burning Man. Some are fearful that the whole game is being gamed by governments, banks, wealthy around the world. I wish people would start addressing this instead of worrying about Lambos, says Neil. Well, Neil, that is a great point, and that's something that we discuss on the show a lot. And that's the thesis for holding Bitcoin, is that if you're selling your Bitcoin now, good God, you're just giving it over to the bankers for them to be slowly accumulating and, of course, looking to manipulate the markets. They are master manipulators of markets. And that's what I've been saying about the Bitcoin ETF, that we're inviting in the worst players possible to the party. Now, the governments, the banks, the wealthy elites, of course they have it out for crypto. Some of them really like it. Some of them really make money off of it. But a lot more of them look at it as a threat. This is part of the reason why China has been cracking down so hard on crypto, because they can't control it. Love blockchain, hate Bitcoin. Typical situation that we see with the big boys worrying about losing their power. Anyway, I don't know if Burning Man's going to actually result in any kind of a positive movement for crypto. Kevin says, Burning Man used to be decentralized, now it is regulated. Yes, like all great things, Burning Man is increasingly becoming, I feel like a lot more of the Coachella kind of crowd are coming to Burning Man now. And look, I haven't actually been to Burning Man. My mom actually tried talking me into going this year. Maybe I should have gone. Could have went and hung out with Da Hong Fei in the desert. Would have been fun. But nevertheless, the reality is it's still an interesting community event. People come together, do awesome things in the desert. And there is a decentral camp there, so maybe they'll actually do something with that as well. But will we see the Burning Man bump? I doubt it. But let's move on to Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom. Nouriel Rubini, bearish on everything crypto. He was at the Block Show conference in Las Vegas recently, coming out saying some pretty harsh words on crypto. There has been a total collapse this year in the cryptocurrency game. It is a crypto apocalypse. This, of course, would be the case for the bust of cryptocurrencies. Kirk says, is Neo really at Burning Man? Kirk, it's not that Neo is at Burning Man, but it seems that Da Hong Fei has gone to Burning Man. Remember, Da Hong Fei is not Neo, even though he does represent it. So, something to keep in mind. Now, it's always really easy for the skeptics and the haters on cryptocurrencies to come out when the price has gone down and say, hey, look, everything's terrible. I told you so. I told you so. But I could say right now, there is going to be another major run-up in cryptocurrencies followed by another major collapse, and therefore you should never invest in cryptocurrencies, even though you might be able to get great profits off of that future run, and that the new low in the future will probably be much higher than the previous lows, which is exactly what we're seeing in this current bear market situation. That's something to keep in mind. And you could probably come back in a couple years and see, and I'll say, see, I told you so. There was going to be another big thing. The cryptocurrency game has collapsed once again. Well, look. Someone like Nouriel Rubini, and there's a lot of other permanent cryptocurrency skeptics, they're always going to be able to come out every year or two and say, see, look, it crashed again. But at the same time, these same people exist in the gold market. These same people exist in the stock markets. These same people exist in the real estate markets. It doesn't surprise me to see someone like Rubini coming out saying bad things about cryptocurrencies, but some people, for some reason, do take him seriously. So he goes on to say, Bitcoin is not money. To be money, it would need to be a unit of account, means of payment, and a stable source of value and purchasing power. Bitcoin and none of these other cryptos are worse, he says. Now, some of that is true. Some of that is not true. We talked recently, I made a video, Bitcoin, the skeptic's case, trying to lay out exactly what is going on in terms of what the skeptics usually say about cryptocurrencies and why they're wrong. Now, in terms of Bitcoin being money, we can sit around and debate all day what money actually is. I mean, some people used to use seashells as money, or the people of, I think, Yap Island used big stones as money. So the idea of money is not always as transparent as we like to think it is, but Bitcoin does fit largely what we might see as money. Now, the one thing that Bitcoin has not yet managed is to be a unit of account. And in the conversation about turning Bitcoin into money, that is one of the next things that we do need to see, Bitcoin becoming a unit of account. That is to say, you will walk into a store and you will see a loaf of bread priced in Satoshis, not in dollars or pesos or rubles or whatever other country you might happen to live in. We haven't got there yet. We might be moving in that direction, especially with some of the countries that have insane devaluation of their currencies, and changing the price of something on a fairly regular basis is not so uncommon in a lot of economies, where you might have a price one day, let's say Venezuela as an example, one day you will have a piece of bread costing 100 bolivars, next day it costs 200 bolivars. You just change the price tag. So to see Bitcoin as a unit of account, we're not that far off, but we're not there yet. Bitcoin as a means of payment. Now, I feel like he's either misinformed or simply being dishonest on this one, because people are paying other people in Bitcoin all the time. A stable source of value. Well, Bitcoin is not stable, but at the same time, not much else is stable too. We are existing on a world where there's all these constantly moving wheels. And to say, for example, and remember, Nero Rubini used to be the treasury chief under Obama, to say that the US dollar is totally stable, well, it's relatively stable in its downward trend and its loss of purchasing power parity. However, Bitcoin is unstable in the means that it keeps going up over time. And yes, you can look at the boom-bust cycles and say, well, Bitcoin went up to 20,000 and now it's down to 6,500, therefore it must be terrible. Well, no. No, that's not quite the case at all. Jordan Miller says, does Lark like privacy coins? Never really heard him say. I do like privacy coins, Jordan, and there's quite a few that I'm a big fan of. I don't own very many at this time. The only real privacy coin that I own currently is PivX, although I am a fan of Zcash and Monero as well. I think they both do interesting things in their own respective ways. But definitely privacy coins fulfill a very, very interesting niche in the markets. Okay. And of course, Nuriel goes on to say even more about why Bitcoin is bad. He says that PayPal and Square and Alipay, digital systems, are used by millions of people today and have nothing to do with blockchain. Well, this is correct. This is correct. He's not wrong on that. But at the same time, that misses the point that any of these services can deny you an account. Any of these services can freeze your account like that. And that is part of the reason behind the power of Bitcoin. You can't be told no. America can't just decide to sanction your whole damn country tomorrow, and then all of a sudden you're cut off from the global economy, because once America sanctions you, everyone else kind of has to play ball or they get hurt as well. And the Europeans are experiencing this right now. If they don't follow along with sanctions on Iran, even if they want to do business with them, they get hurt. The threats are there in terms of economic damage that might be done to one's country. When we see that the major credit rating agencies and the major world banks and all these things have a lot of power coming out of Washington, you realize the power of having censorship-resistant money. But again, someone like Nero Rubini, who is saying that there will be a bust in cryptocurrencies. Doesn't see it that way. Hodl Fuel, thank you very much for the donation. Much appreciated. Now, look, he also talks about the centralization of wealth, the centralization of mining, and this is problematic for Bitcoin. I don't disagree with him once again, but at the same time, I disagree with the details of what he's saying. So he says decentralization is a total myth, explaining that crypto miners, exchanges, developers, and wealth are all in fact centralized. Well, yes and no. And I'm actually working on an interesting video for you guys on the topic of decentralization, because there's a lot of misconceptions about decentralization, and it seems that Nouriel is either, again, unaware or being dishonest in what he's saying when it comes to where this is all going with centralization and decentralization. Yes, we do see too many mining pools, or not enough mining pools, I suppose is the problem. Currently, there's around 20 mining pools in Bitcoin, and of those 20 approximately mining pools, only around 4 or 5 of them control half or more of the total hash power. But anybody can plug into the system, and he says places like Russia, China, and Belarus are where most of the mining is concentrated at. And again, put that through the lens of Nouriel Roubini was Obama's Treasury Secretary, so if a lot of the mining power is in Russia, China, or Belarus, that must be a bad thing. Oh, and other places where organized crime syndicates dominate the crypto world. It's all about organized crime, guys. That's all that crypto is. Just one big pile of organized crime. Look, again, this completely washes over the fact that the Republic of Georgia is one of the world's biggest mining countries, that the United States is growing its capacity for Bitcoin mining massively all the time. Places like Montana and New York and Maine are all getting big renewable Bitcoin mining farms. Quebec as well, getting in big time. Iceland is one of the biggest places in the world. And again, he didn't say, you know, mostly places like Russia, China, Belarus, Canada, the United States, Iceland, and Georgia, because that would give a very different picture, because those aren't the enemies of the United States, of course. The centralization of wealth. He brings on the Gini coefficient in terms of where it stands. He says Bitcoin is 88%, which makes it worse than North Korea in terms of wealth distribution. Well, look, I think a lot of that number, and again, I don't necessarily like the metric or the statistics that he's trying to use to discount Bitcoin here. However, if you look at Satoshi's coins, and let's assume that Satoshi at this point is probably dead. Maybe not. Maybe he'll surprise us all in 10 years and it'll actually be Elon Musk and he'll spend all his Bitcoin to go and build a city on Mars. I don't know. But if Satoshi is dead, then that totally changes these metrics that he's looking at. And he's probably also calculating in here that most of the biggest Bitcoin addresses are the exchanges themselves. So again, it is using numbers to manipulate the narrative. And it's dishonest at its core. Because of course it is. Somebody said up here, in God we trust. I assume that is in relation to the US dollar and what is written on the back of the US dollar. Trust us. We're good for it. God said so. And of course, when you look at Bitcoin, for example, let's trust mathematics. I am a lot more likely to trust mathematics over God. And of course, it's not even like God has, come down and or sanctioned, sent some kind of message across to the Pope like, by the way, I'm backing the US dollar. I know they wrote "In God We Trust" on the back of that. I would just like to say that as God, I have backed that currency up. That hasn't happened. It's just some dudes in Washington wrote that on the back, be like, yo, we're good for it, man. Take the piece of paper with a number written on it. Anyway. Are you bullish on Gods Unchained, says Yvonne. Honestly, I do not know very much about Gods Unchained at all. Really. Now, I know I mentioned it briefly in terms of Magic the Gathering and the recent Gods Unchained card that's been sold, but I haven't really looked into the game, to be honest. So, Angelo asks, Lark, do you think Bitcoin to go back up to $20,000? Yes, and way beyond that. Now, we're going to move on to our next bit of the story here. CNBC's Bitcoin Boom or Bust with Melissa Lee premieres on Monday. Now, I'm going to hold back a lot of my judgments on this until I actually see it. I will, of course, have to watch that. But it's certainly interesting that CNBC has been a big proponent of cryptos overall. They certainly talk about it a lot. They're not always right. In fact, we're going to get into that in a minute, but somebody asks, any news on NEM? They are very quiet, says American Crypto. Well, NEM, that's pretty typical for NEM. NEM's usually pretty quiet. They're always just out there doing and building, and I keep a relatively close eye on what the guys at NEM are up to, and I'm telling you, they're always up to something. Even if they're not making a lot of news announcements about it, they're always up to something, those guys. Now, the Bitcoin Boom or Bust, can we call it a mockumentary? No, it's technically a documentary. It's interesting. And again, we'll have to actually see it when it comes out to understand what kind of overall slant they're taking. But I can tell from the advertising for it, it doesn't seem very, very positive. They talk about a Bitcoin millionaire who lives in a treehouse, and they interview the guy, and he's wearing, you know, like cheetah paws, for example. Well, okay, if you go and talk to that guy, it makes everyone look like they're crazy who invests in Bitcoin. And I'm not saying that guy's crazy. That guy can do whatever the hell he wants to with his life. But how many suits did they go out and interview? And I could care less about suits. I'd rather hang out with the guy who lives in the treehouse, to be honest. But when you're presenting that to a mainstream audience, they will get certain ideas about it. They also go and talk to an escort who uses Bitcoin to transform the sex trade, and a billionaire venture capitalist who says Bitcoin is bigger than the internet. So just from the outset, and again, I haven't seen the episode, so we'll have to see, but they go and talk to one of the most eccentric Bitcoin enthusiasts they can find, a hooker, and a billionaire. Just think about that for a second. Now, at the same time, they do go over to Africa, providing an eye-opening look at what some Bitcoin believers consider a gold mine for crypto investment. Places like the continent of Africa offer such an amazing opportunity for cryptocurrencies. I don't know how they take it. Again, we have to actually watch the episode tomorrow and we'll find out. But somewhere like Africa, where you have around 50 countries on the continent and all these different currencies, all these different borders, all these different capital controls, lack of access to bank accounts, etc., etc., etc. Perfect use case for cryptocurrencies. Seriously. And of course, they have to go off and talk to Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street. God, why are they still asking this guy about cryptocurrency? That's like going off and asking Craig Wright what he thinks about cryptocurrencies. Like, why are you asking this person? They're a fraud. They're a fraud. In fact, Jordan Belfort actually says, I was a con man. And that's exactly what's happening with Bitcoin. When this thing goes bust, a lot of innocent people are going to get slaughtered. Well, again, it is, do you believe that Bitcoin is the future of money? Or do you look at it through the Jordan Belfort lens of, I'm a con man and everything's a con? In fact, he probably hates Bitcoin because it's not something that he can make a con on. This guy. Why are people still talking to him? Now, To put into perspective, CNBC, I think is very interesting because if you trade and do the opposite of what CNBC says, you will be 95% accurate in your crypto trading. Navin says, I remember when they made documentaries about the internet in the early 90s. Yeah, that certainly killed the movement, didn't it? Exactly. And this is the same narrative happening right now with Bitcoin. You look at it and you think, you see all these serious people. I mean, just go back and research the internet. If you weren't around in the early 90s and you haven't seen any of this stuff, literally the morning shows, Good Morning America or whatever the heck it's called, you would see, and people would be on there saying, gosh, I really don't understand this internet thing. Oh, it's can't be a big thing. And people like Paul Krugman came out and said that the internet's never going to be big. And then comments on Bitcoin, right? Again, technology will simply be. When you understand the trends in technology, you see the future of Bitcoin is quite clearly written. And that's what gets me excited. Now, so if you would like to be using CNBC's tweets to inform your trading, you can see things like this where it says, at the absolute top, Chartmaster Carter Worth says today's crypto crush could actually be your best chance to buy Bitcoin. Spencer, how's it going, man? Welcome to the party. Which, seriously, it's pretty funny. And then, of course, all the red tweets are when they are saying crypto's over, now you should sell. And when it's green, they're saying crypto's the best thing ever, now you should buy. So if you just do the opposite of what CNBC says, you're probably going to do okay in your crypto trading. Lark, that won't continue forever. They know we know that now. They will change up their counter trading tactics probably, says Music Boy 3. Yeah, I know Music Boy 3. I mean, seriously, if you're taking your investing advice from trying to trade the opposite of what CNBC is doing, you got to check yourself, because that's not serious financial advice, guys. Okay. Prominent investor, this Bitcoin bear season may last for quite some time. Well, it very well may indeed last for quite some time, but I don't think it's going to last as long as previous markets, or as some of the bears seem to think that it will last. But regardless, this is something for you to think about. If the Bitcoin bear market or the crypto bear market lasts for 2 or 3 or 4 years, are you ready to handle that? Do you believe that Bitcoin is the future of money? If so, I look at that and I say, whatever, man. Bear market, who cares? There's still plenty of money to be made in a bear market. Just because you don't have these big parabolic runs happening doesn't mean that there's still not bucket loads of opportunities in terms of simple swing trades, or, still getting into some of the top ICOs as examples, acquiring cheap masternodes and accumulating greater quantities of coins. All that stuff will hold value because the market will turn around. This is the cycle of markets. Markets go up, markets go down. It has sometimes been much more marked in the Bitcoin markets than in other markets, but nevertheless, it is all a question of psychology. Damien says, I was just thinking of it, reverse psychology idea, and now you said it publicly. Great, thanks. You're welcome, Damien. That's pretty much life. Do the opposite of what the governments and the bankers say. Amen to that. Lark, can you talk about ICX? We're hoping to get Min Kim from ICX into the token tank one of these days here soon. And it's been doing kind of okay in the past couple of days, but the long-term trend for Icon has been pretty brutal. And now it's not some major outlier, really, when it comes to the current trends in the crypto markets. It's actually performed relatively normally in terms of how badly everything has been crushed. But Icon has failed to hit a lot of key deadlines, and they're still missing deadlines. And that sucks. that doesn't say a lot to investors who put their money in. So it would be nice to see them having more transparency in terms of regular communication with their community and, of course, regular communication about these missed deadlines. But that being said, I still think that Icon has got a great future ahead of it. I've got an Icon bag, and for me, it would be crazy to sell it now. I was lucky to pick up most of my Icon around the $2 mark, which compared to today's prices is not very exciting. But that being said, I think the long-term potential for Icon is quite good, but time will tell, of course. Jim Beam, CNBC probably got a lot of people wrecked. Yeah, I remember at the absolute top they had like a 5-minute thing on here is how you go and buy Ripple, like on the day when it was like the top price. And that's, I'm not talking bad about Ripple there. That's just CNBC telling people to do the wrong things. But then again, who's behind CNBC? Major Ripple holders, major Bitcoin holders, telling people to go out and buy the top. Of course, well, okay, no, I wouldn't actually, but I understand the people who own news agencies and then go out and push these kind of narratives because they can cash in on it. And I know a lot of people assume that, crypto YouTubers have some kind of influence on the markets where we can talk about a coin and pump it up. And, very, very few people actually have such a following or an audience where they can do that. And the few people who have done that, their audiences have largely turned against them because it doesn't take people very long to figure out what the hell's going on. Zach says, if real buy pressure is high enough, the market can't be manipulated down. Manipulators' bags won't be big enough, and you can't buy a market down. Amen to that, Zach. Good point. Aaron says, you will know if they are dead when Bitcoin has a bull run and they don't do anything but go even farther down. A lot of people asking about Elastos as well. Big Elastos fan. I think I mentioned recently that I did double my position on Elastos. I don't have a crazy amount of it, but I really like Elastos. I think it's a fantastic project that does have a very exciting future ahead of it. I know we've had a couple interviews recently with the guys from Elastos, so definitely a cool project. I can't wait to see them really starting to up their game and, getting even more out there. But they did just have a big meeting in Thailand the other day, so pretty cool stuff going on with Elastos. It's one of those projects I look at it that it's a long-term hold for me. And a lot of the cryptos that I hold, even though I'm stuck with a couple of bags that I didn't intend to get stuck with, and that was me being silly. But the reality is that some of these, though, will do very, very well in the long run. And I look at something like Elastos, says, yeah, that'll be a great long-term hold. Will it outperform Bitcoin? Well, that's an interesting question. Because a lot of the altcoins haven't outperformed Bitcoin in the long run. But we'll see. Oh, I like this story. Barry says, I'm a bartender, helped a random customer to buy Bitcoin, took 20 minutes, but the chap didn't believe it could be done. He walked out the door later with a smile, not mentioning the smile on my face. Nice, Barry. I like that. That's awesome. That's really, really cool. It just takes a few minutes of time, and this is something I've said before, that one of the greatest gifts you can give to people is to take a bit of time to tell them about cryptocurrencies. I know we're all always talking about, okay, mass adoption's got to come, and oh God, the ETF's got to come and save us. Save us, ETF. Well, one of the things that's really going to make the crypto markets boom to a level that we can't even imagine them to be at. And again, you guys know how much I love the censorship resistance and all this stuff, but hey, making some sweet gains is an important part of why people get invested in cryptocurrencies. Tell a friend. Tell a lot of friends. Tell everybody you know. I literally have a YouTube channel talking about cryptocurrencies, guys. No, look, realistically, you got to take that time. Sit down with somebody and say, hey, I'm going to help you open up a Coinbase account, and we're going to get you your first few bucks in Bitcoin here. Or just give them $10 worth of Bitcoin to show them how easy it is. Get on there, download a wallet real quick. and then send them $10 worth of Bitcoin, and then they'll have it. And then they can play with it and they can send it back to you, or they can go cash it out, or they can watch the prices or whatever they want to do. Show them how easy it is to buy it. So I love those kind of stories. Take a bit of time, tell people what's going on. Edward says, don't be afraid to cut your losses on some cryptos and reinvest. Most altcoin dropped, so you really only lose the difference between what you're selling and buying, the relative decline. There you go. Yeah, I've had to make the tricky call on a few of them. I was lucky to get out on a couple of cryptos recently where, yeah, I just didn't feel like the future of those was going to be good, and I got basically my Bitcoin back, or for only a slight loss on my Bitcoin value. So there you go. Preston says, you need a crypto YouTube so you can own your content and get paid. It's called DTube. It's called DTube, my friend. And I've been posting over on DTube quite a bit recently. I can finally upload my videos there easily enough. The upload time is brutally slow, but at least I can upload my videos. Now I've been trying to use bit.tube and BitChute, but the video upload process is so painful that I haven't been doing it. But I will check back in like a month. I'm sure I'll be working on it. So actually get back in there and, try to re-upload, because here I am every day talking about, we got to get away from Facebook and YouTube and all this stuff. And here we are on YouTube, because this is where all of you guys are. If everybody just went over to Steam It tomorrow, for example, and, DLive or DTube as outside of that, well, then I would look and go, okay, I'm going to go over there. But until we all move over there or start, dabbling a bit more, here we are. Here's where the message comes through at. But I do like the decentralized alternatives. I haven't found a decentralized alternative that is really the Facebook killer yet. I mean, I like Mines. Mines is fun enough, but they've been around for years and just haven't really got that audience yet. And it's hard to compete with Facebook because they're a multi-billion-dollar company. So that's definitely tricky when it comes down to that. Zach says, I agree. It's unfortunate that we gather on Facebook and YouTube. Yeah, but the trend is starting. More and more people are actually getting over on DTube, and I see that. And as we get better decentralized alternatives, more people will move over there. I'm just waiting for somebody to build, a Facebook on top of EOS, for example. Well, that could be really exciting. That could be really exciting indeed to see something like that. Online Billing says, do your next live show on DTube. I think I got to do it on DLive, actually, which I've had even more trouble with in terms of DTube. But nevertheless, maybe I should do that. I'll keep it in mind for one of these days soon. That's for sure. YouTube has money. Money buys servers and reps and employees. A lot of these decentralized companies don't have that luxury. Yeah, this is true. This is true. This is definitely a part of it. But you have to remember that they're grandfathered in the terms that they didn't have that money to start with. Think about when Zuckerberg and the Winklevosses started Facebook back at college. Well, there you go. They didn't have all that stuff then, but it built out over time. And these other things will build out as well. So it's just a question of when they will build out. Lark, what is your take on aliens? The one thing that really drives me crazy about aliens, when they come into my bedroom at night, man. Those guys, I keep telling them not to come back, but they keep coming. Just don't get it. Anyway, besides the point. Okay. Let's go ahead and hop on to the next idea here. Now, there are a lot of strong bears out there in the crypto markets. Some people saying that we could see $3,000 for Bitcoin once again. Some people saying that we could see $5,000 for Bitcoin once again. Others looking at even the $1,000 Bitcoin once again. I honestly do not think that we are going to get anywhere close to the $1,000 Bitcoin once again. $5,000 Bitcoin, that could be in play, but we would need some pretty strong downward pushes in order for that to happen. And it's interesting that we actually had a lot of bad news in the last week, and it didn't even really do much, to be honest. I mean, look at the crackdown going on in China right now. They're hitting it hard because the reality is that China came out and said, we're going to make it hard for people to buy Bitcoin in China. And people were like, whatever, government, we don't care. And they just kept on buying it, using virtual private networks, going down back alleys and buying it off dudes, be like, hey, kid, you want some Bitcoin? Yeah, man, I'll take some Bitcoin. Literally, this is what was happening in China. They're trying to crack down on it even more, but it's not going to work. That kind of FUD would have, crashed the market at a different times, but we've had so much FUD happening that it kind of just don't care anymore. Whatever, more FUD, let's do it. Another Bitcoin ETF rejected? Who cares? Doesn't matter. And so I don't see us moving a lot lower than where we're at right now. Crypto Oracle says the bears are getting tired. Yeah, I have a feeling the bears are starting to get kind of tired. I'll go back to a couple of these here. Hannon asks, what is going on with Tezos? No one is really talking about them. I did a review on them recently enough, and I haven't been keeping super close tabs on Tezos, but certainly I think they could be one of the interesting ones coming into the next big bear run. What else do we have here? Governments are Skynet. Bitcoin is the resistance. The crypto Lark is John Connor. Oh my God. That's hilarious, Crypto Brad. Akmal says, I know English well as I'm Uzbekistani. I cannot earn with PayPal, but how can I work as an Uzbek if we don't have a PayPal account? Well, you could use Bitcoin. This is the thing. People could be paying you in Bitcoin, and I don't know what kind of situation you have in Uzbekistan in particular around getting paid, but you might, for example, see a situation where you could be using local Bitcoins, get paid in Bitcoin if you're doing freelancing, something like that. I assume might be the case. Well, then you could be doing that. So, will the flippening ever happen, says Lane Anderson? Well, that's an interesting question. That's an interesting question. Well, in terms of a flippening, for anyone who doesn't know, the flippening is where something like Ethereum overtakes Bitcoin. I don't know. Ever. I mean, ever is a long time. I mean, are we going to see that happen in the next couple years or in our lifetime or anything like that? I'm not sure, unless there's some kind of, black swan event for Bitcoin, maybe, or Ethereum becomes the new internet, maybe. But if Ethereum's the new internet, then Bitcoin will be the money of the new internet, more than likely. I don't see it happening anytime soon. Let's say that. If we are going to see a flippening happen, I don't see that happening at any point in the foreseeable future. And it would take some pretty strong catalysts, one side or the other, to make such an event happen. Vincent says Ethereum is broken. Well, no, Vincent, Ethereum's not broken. Try to reframe the thought around that a little bit. It's not that Ethereum is broken. It's that Ethereum right now is having scaling issues. And in terms of scaling issues, it is working on those scaling issues. It's lucky that currently there's not such a demand for blockchain-based applications that it's getting killed by the market, right? But we do see a lot of projects moving away from Ethereum, and Ethereum has been talking about scaling for quite some time. Sharding is going to come. Proof of stake is going to come. Off-chain scaling solutions, side chains, all this stuff is going to happen, but it hasn't happened today. And that's what a lot of people look at and go, well, because it hasn't happened today. But this is what so much of the crypto market's about. This is the opportunity, the fact that Well, it's not being used yet. By the time that Ethereum becomes the global internet computer, right, and Bitcoin is global money accepted everywhere and is the unit of account everywhere, well, you're too late. You missed out. Realistically. Now is the time for getting involved if you like these cryptocurrencies, if you think that Ethereum has a great future. I think Ethereum has a great future. I am also very bullish on a lot of the other platforms, though, as well. So this is something to keep in mind. Josh says, Crypto Lark, are you going to attend any events in the near future? I'm probably going to be going to East West. It's November, San Francisco, Block Connect, January, also in San Francisco. I thought it was in New York, but it's actually San Francisco. So here you go. And yeah, I don't know if I'll go to any other ones. I was actually supposed to go to one in Norway, but unfortunately the one in San Francisco moved to States. And anyway, but I'll definitely keep you guys informed if there are going to be any events they'll be going to. And when I do go to San Francisco, for example, I'll let everyone over there know, and we'll try and do a meetup. Also going to try and do some meetups here in New Zealand. I've been really slack on that, but definitely something to be working on. Lark, why aren't there more projects using or creating stable coins? I think most coins will never not be volatile. Most coins should be paired to something stable. Well, Twisted Pair, stable coins are becoming more and more popular all the time. We see, for example, Maker's DAI. Maker's DAI is probably one of the most popular ones at the moment in terms of the decentralized stable coins. Obviously, Tether has been quite popular for quite a while. We saw a bank launching their own equivalent stable coin crypto from Liechtenstein the other day. We have True USD. So they're becoming more and more popular all the time. It's just a question of how soon they become ubiquitous, I suppose, is always the question. Why hasn't Binance added Elastos yet? It is a puzzle. They will at some point. Binance does their little game where they delay people and charge them lots of money, and maybe they don't want to pay all that money and all this stuff. But Neil Jones, how can crypto break away from fiat to being pegged to fiat? Well, there's, I think, a situation of we have basically a certain amount of crypto investors who will always look to get more Bitcoin, and the price of Bitcoin doesn't become such a big driving factor, whereas a lot of people will be stuck on the Bitcoin to cash idea, where they always have to cash out and get more dollars. But it will be a revolution in mindset when people start to realize, like, hey, you can be your own bank, you can use these tools that exist for your financial future. And we do need to see the unit of account come into play. And that will happen at some point, but I think we're quite a way for unit of account with Bitcoin. But once we get a multi-trillion-dollar cap for something like Bitcoin, then I think we start seeing more relative stability. And I think the innovation is really going to come from third world countries. It's going to be places like Venezuela or Zimbabwe, as an example, that use Bitcoin as a unit of account first. Other countries will follow. Places like the US will be the absolute last to have Bitcoin as a unit of account, unless the US dollar falls well before that. But the little countries, or the smaller economies, they'll innovate first. It's my thought anyway. Why do people say altcoins projects are dead when in reality these projects are several years away from accomplishing what they're trying to achieve? Tomisto to 40. Great question. Great question. And a lot of it comes down to the unrealistic expectations of people in the market, because they see projects that lost value, because the crypto markets are like that at the moment. Well, they think that, okay, there's no team left behind there, there's no development happening, and hey, nobody likes losing money. I keep that real. That doesn't mean these projects are dead. In fact, there's a lot of projects that have been called dead right now in the crypto media that are far from dead at all. They're actively working. They have whole teams of people who raised millions of dollars because they believe in an idea. They want to deliver something for the, crypto ecosystem. And that doesn't mean that their token is going to be highly valuable all the time. And that is something to keep in mind. But we see a lot of projects like this that are actually doing things. And people say, oh, well, that coin's dead. Well, not actually. People are using it. And it might get a little trickier when we get farther down the ladder in terms of, well, are people still using privacy coin number 50, for example? Well, maybe not. Maybe the communities will be shifting away towards other communities. And not every community will stay powerful. But that's the market. That's the market reacting to what the market wants. Big Lark rocking the house, yo. What up? Okay. Chris Waters, so what team does Bitcoin have? Obviously, well, there's a whole team of developers behind Bitcoin, actually, but it doesn't have the corporate body behind it that a lot of these other projects do. And that's an interesting thing about Bitcoin. Sometimes I feel like if Bitcoin had not been the first... just imagine trying to sell Bitcoin to someone nowadays. Oh, yeah, some anonymous creator just started this thing and nobody knows who it is. And it uses all this energy and it's really slow and all these things. But Bitcoin came in first. So, Lark, what is your sense of how many projects will get washed out? A lot of people think 95% of them should die. Asks Twisted Pear. Well, that's a great question, actually. Look, when we see the markets as they are today, I think a lot of people forget that these are startup companies. Seriously, a lot of these companies, a lot of these ICOs that we invest in or projects that we back or communities that we become part of, you're actually joining up in a community with a startup project. And a lot of these startup projects are going to fail. That's just the markets. Maybe the market wasn't ready for them. Maybe the team sucked in the end. Maybe they spent all their money. A lot of this is going to happen. Realistically. A lot of this is going to happen. And that's okay. People see that as a bad thing. I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that as the market's maturing. Because people are experimenting right now. They're seeing what they can do with blockchain. They're seeing what they can do with cryptocurrencies. And I love that. I love that, man. That's great. That's great. This kind of experimentation in crypto is exactly what we need. And just because one team did something that sucked and failed doesn't mean that another team's not going to come by and improve on that later. This is the way of it. This is the way we're going to be moving going forward. Okay, on to our next story. Shapeshift CEO, Bitcoin bear market isn't over yet. Accumulate now, he says. Tom Lee, by the way, for some reason I was talking about Bobby Lee yesterday in my news bit, but I said Tom Lee. I was reading this Tom Lee article before I talked about Bobby Lee. Why do they have to have the last same names? Anyway, they do. So, Tom Lee standing by his $20,000 end of year target for Bitcoin. That's quite bullish if you think that you could accumulate Bitcoin now and see it at $20,000 later. Again, that is if you are really focused on that fiat value. Bobby Lee, the other Lee, he is much more bullish. He sees it will reach $60,000 by 2020. And again, random numbers in the air. Who's going to be right? We will see in the end, of course. But I'm bullish on the fact that there are so many people who are so incredibly bullish on the future of cryptocurrencies, because I try to be as unbiased as possible when I look at this information. Seriously, I look at it and I look at like Nouriel Roubini, right? And I say, okay, well, what does Dr. Doom have to say? And I look at it and I say, well, you're just not right on some of these things. And I think that's important. I think that's important to keep in mind. I love the detractors, and I know a lot of people get scared by the detractors, but the detractors keep you honest. The detractors keep reminding you of why what is good, because if you just have Tom and Bobby out there all the time saying, to the moon! Well, that's great, and yeah, I am incredibly bullish on the future of cryptocurrencies, guys. But I like the detracting voices, because they help reminding you why they're wrong, of course, but also why this technology is so damn important. Because a lot of people are all too happy to censor others, for example, and that's just not the way of the future. We need censorship resistance as like a human right, but we don't have that right now. Bitcoin offers that. Other blockchain tech offers that. And so when I see Tom and Bobby out there saying random numbers, well, I agree with them. We will be at random numbers for Bitcoin in the future. $20,000 by the end of the year seems like an easy target for me. You look back on where we were last year, right around this time. Nobody, well, okay, some people were predicting, but very, very few people predicted 20K by the end of the year. But it happened. It could just easily happen this year or much above that. Eric says, if you're weak now at 6K, do yourself a favor and get out. You won't know how to act at 6 million. Robert Almeida says, VT price for sure. Every halvening in the past has a major run up after the fact. Yeah, the halvenings are important. I think that the next Bitcoin halvening, it's a little under 2 years away still. The next Litecoin halvening is about a year away, approximately. So things to keep in mind. The halvenings are definitely interesting events and really shake up everything in terms of how the emission of it goes. I mean, just think that pretty soon, in this big scheme of things, the daily emission of Bitcoin is going to go down from 1,800 to like 900. And then 4 years after that, it's going to go from 900 to 450. We have this increasingly scarce asset, which is incredibly useful. How can you not be bullish on the future of cryptocurrency? Aaron says, Bitcoin Cash scares me too much. Twisted Pair, I think most people should be thinking long-term, get a little Bitcoin and then forget about it. Don't buy pizza with it. You know, it's interesting, the pizza guy who bought from Laszlo's Pizza, the $10,000 for 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas guy, he didn't regret that. And he's probably the kind of guy who bought more Bitcoin later on and had more Bitcoin. But it served as an interesting purpose. Somebody had to do it. Somebody had to do it, guys. And be the, first one to really buy something with Bitcoin. Not just to send it to someone else, but to do a purchase. And that was the Bitcoin pizza. He sacrificed for all of us, guys, so that we could be here now talking about, we need to get more merchants on board and all this stuff. All that's coming. Remember, we are at the early days of what is going to be as important as the next internet. Zenyatta says, Lightning Network is crap, set up a node and find out. Well, just because something isn't working as you want it to right now doesn't mean that it's going to be bad in the future. Seriously. Just because Lightning Network's not perfect doesn't mean that's not going to be great down the road. And that's something to remember. Everybody says because things don't work today, well, it sucks. And that's like going back to the start of the car industry and saying, oh yeah, but they're not safe and they're not fast enough and there's not enough roads around here, so they're not really all that useful, are they? Yeah, but give it time. All of that infrastructure will be built out. So Jim C says Tony Vase has made the most accurate prediction regarding Bitcoin. He does not see Bitcoin at 20,000 by year end. Tony might be right. Tom Lee might be right. We will find out at the end of the year, because there are all these different catalysts that can change the technical analysis. So when Tone looks at his technical analysis and sees one thing, but then we get a Bitcoin ETF approval, which may not happen until next year. It's going to happen at some point, just a question of when. But if that were to happen, well, that would probably really screw up Tone's technical analysis. I'm not putting down there by any means. Got a lot of respect for the guy, but when you think about that, the exact end of year number, well, that's not even super relevant in terms of where it's going to be in 5 years. Because I can bet you this, in 5 years' time, Bitcoin's going to be worth a lot more than $6,000. So, something to keep in mind. Okay. And a final idea for catalysts of the future of Bitcoin, outside of ETF and all the other drama going on, is backed. And this is going to be really, really big in terms of getting adoption happening. So if you didn't hear about this, this is what ICE and Microsoft and Starbucks and all this coming together is going to really just deliver a lot for the crypto markets overall. And all these different things add up. So I heard a quote recently that said, selling crypto in 2018 is like selling Amazon stock in 2001. Well, yeah, partially, without a doubt. But this is the thing, is that it's all a question of where you are coming from and where you're at, right? If you bought Bitcoin at a, let's say, I don't know, $6,000 or $5,800 recently. Let's say that, the recent lows, but $1,500. Let's say about $5,800. You're selling an average $6,500. Well, you made a profit, didn't you? And who am I to sit here and say, well, you should hold longer or not? I mean, I know what I see in cryptocurrencies, and I know the future of cryptocurrencies and what this industry could hold. And so I'm very bullish on the long-term prospects. But at the same time, you can't be afraid to make a bit of money. And take your profits when you get them, guys. This is one thing that I think is quite a common mistake among a lot of investors, is that they actually get afraid to take profits once in a while. If you see something go up massively, don't be afraid to take a little bit of that out. It's what you got involved in crypto for. But for me, I'm always, as I mentioned before, when I trade like altcoins, for example, or invest in them and hopefully get out of them at some point in the future when they're worth more. Well, if I get those profit opportunities, take a little bit of fiat, pay the bills and all that stuff, right? And put a little more into Bitcoin. A little more Bitcoin, live life, etc. And there you go. Okay. Guys, I think we're going to go up and finish up there for today. You guys are awesome. So thank you so much for coming out to the chat today, asking and answering all kinds of fun questions in the chat up here. I see what goes on up there, even though I don't always comment on all of it. So thank you to the moderators for helping keep the conversation a friendly and interesting place for everybody. Thank you all for coming out here and listening to me talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies for a while. Seriously, you guys are super, super awesome. So the support for the channel is just absolutely amazing. It's just always an honor to come out here and get to talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies for a little bit, and have all you guys come out here and ask questions and, get a chance to chat with me. It's super awesome. Seriously, you guys are great. Long live the blockchain, and peace out till next time.